Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Prescribing Lifestyle Podcast. Today, I've got a very special lady, Lena Stocks-Ramsay. She worked with me in being well in Prahran, and I've been fascinated by her work. She's an osteopath and she has this bio-emotional regulation that she does for people. And I really want to dive in and get to know her. So I've invited Lena to come into my podcast. Thank you, Lena. Welcome to the Prescribing Lifestyle Podcast.
Hi, Ivy. So great to be here. And I love that you've just gone straight in there and you're talking about, bio-emotional regulation and you're wanting to understand. Because I think something that's really interesting and that we can probably dive into is looking at your approach with lifestyle, really
Mm,
focusing on education.
yep.
And I think at the core of everything that I'm doing,
Hmm.
we share that same philosophy. It's how
Yeah.
can we help to really bring awareness to people's lives, help them understand the different elements and the different pieces that they can actually draw on to help themselves.
Yeah,
You and I
absolutely.
are you and I are both practitioners and we understand the importance of supporting patients when they come and see us, but
Hmm.
ultimately we want them to leave with an understanding of what they can take into their own hands
Mm,
and actually do themselves. We want them
abs-
to not need us.
that's right. It
We
doesn't
want to
sound very
empower
good.
them.
Doesn't sound good because we're not making money, but I think this is really great to empower the patients to help
Absolutely.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, as you said, my name's Dr. Lena Stocks-Ramsay, and I'm an osteopath. I actually trained here in Melbourne, so RMIT, and I've been a practicing osteopath for over a decade now. So, time just absolutely flies. And I think what was quite interesting about my journey is even before I graduated, osteopathy actually has this really beautiful kind of holistic philosophy inbuilt. So I was lucky enough to get that kind of founding in already looking a bit holistically. But even before I graduated, I found myself asking, why is this happening? What else is going on? Working just structurally with the body, I was wanting to understand what this person's got, say, digestive issues going on. If their diet's not so fantastic, how is that maybe playing into their back pain? Or is there something else going on here? And I just felt as though even before I finished, there were some pieces I hadn't received in my training. And I was very lucky actually in my final semester of uni. I went over and did an internship in India. And I actually worked at this incredible sports medical hospital. And I think because we were there supporting the surgical team, and there really wasn't, we were working with everything. We were looking at everything from pre-diabetics to post-surgery cases. And we really got an opportunity to look at things very holistically. And so
Mm,
I started to kind of look at, okay, so from a physical perspective, maybe someone's experiencing some pain, but what else is going on? What else is going on for this person? And I think particularly in India, that relationship with doctor and patient, there wasn't perhaps the understanding of what an osteo was. So they would come and tell us everything. They
mhm,
would tell us everything that was going on medically, everything that was going on in their lives. And it opened this really beautiful door for me
mhm.
because by the time I finished that semester and I graduated, I was already going, okay, I need to go deeper. What else
Wow.
can I ask? How do I understand what's going on inside the body?
Yeah.
How is that showing up on the outside of the body? And then as things progress, I started to realize that it wasn't just physiologically was
Hmm.
showing up in the body. So when I say physiologically, I mean, for example, things like you work with, the diet, is the immune system healthy? How's that affecting someone's physical
Mm,
pain, for example?
yeah.
But I started to realize it was also what was going on within that person,
Mm,
what was showing up in their lives, because that shows up in your body. Hmm.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
great. Must have been very fascinating going to India and learning all those different people.
It was absolutely incredible. And I think I was really, really lucky that there was one of the mentors there, she was also an osteopath, but she'd had a really long history of digestive issues. So she'd been introduced to someone who actually looked at that element
Okay.
osteopathically, and then obviously diet and nutrition as well. But
Yep.
so that was a really interesting mentor
Hmm.
for me to have early on. And she
Okay.
definitely opened my mind. And I think that kind of curiosity to just keep asking why, going deeper, what else
Yep.
are we missing? What else is going on?
Hmm.
I think that really just started that for
Mm,
me for the rest of my career, which I'm really grateful for, actually.
amazing. So what you do is traditional osteopathy and your bioemotional regulation. Tell us a
Mm.
bit more about each of them. What's the difference and why have you gone from osteo to bioemotional?
Yeah, absolutely. So, osteopathy, for anyone that hasn't experienced it before, is a manual healthcare. So, it's a manual treatment. So, a bit like if you go and get a massage, or perhaps if you've seen a physio, these are some more common or well-known modalities. We're also working with the physical structure of the body. So, we will see everyone from someone dealing with pain, injuries, or a little bit more like I do. I work a lot with people who are recovering from post-surgery, women who've had children, maybe some sort of pelvic pain, and we're looking at how is that affecting the physical structure and function of the body, and we're seeking to relieve tension, restore balance to different structures, and also have an impact on the way that the tissues are draining, healing, and recovering. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of different things we can do osteopathically. And the bioemotional regulation, what I realized quite early on was if someone would come to me with a physical injury or a physical pain, for example, that would keep returning. I would go through the typical treatment. I would maybe um, align that area. I would release tension in the muscles and they'd go away. They'd do their exercises. They'd make changes, their desk posture, and it would come back. I was like, okay, well, there's something else going on here. And I would often be working with a person and I would literally have spent 20 minutes releasing tension in their body. I'd felt the area, it feels beautiful. And they'd start talking to me about something going on in their lives. And I
Mm,
would literally feel the tension in the tissues change under my hands. Real
wow.
instantaneous change, particularly in the neck, shoulders, and the jaw.
Hmm.
So, this is an interesting area because this somatically, so when we say somatically means like working with the body, how
Hmm.
the body is moving through an experience,
Mm,
working with that area, that's like our armory.
mm,
So when we've got things going on in our life and we're bracing into it,
hmm.
or we're feeling like we've got a lot on our shoulders,
Mm,
we actually brace through the neck and the shoulders. And
yes.
so I realized there was this link between the psychology and the physiology. And I know on that as well, actually, it's quite interesting. When our body goes into a stress response, there's a bunch of different muscles that get activated in everybody,
Hmm.
biologically speaking.
Mm,
So some of the muscles around the rib cage, our diaphragm, actually in through the skull and the jaw. So a lot of people say when they feel stress, they get neck pain, they get, a tight chest, they have jaw tension. And this is because the body's actually bracing the rib cage just
mm,
in case there's impact.
yeah, yeah.
So I started to realize that if someone was coming in with a symptom that returned over
Hmm.
and over, it wasn't just enough to release the area. We
Hmm.
actually had to look at what's going on,
Mm,
what's going on a deeper level, how are they relating to their life? Because that's
mm,
actually what's going on here. The
yeah,
person is having a response to something that's showing up in their life, and their body is simply expressing that.
yeah, yeah. What sort of stress do you see? Like relatives dying, or they're just running around after kids, or work stress, something like that?
Yeah. Look, that's a really good question. And I think it's an interesting one. My response is going to be interesting because there's two layers to this.
Mm,
On a simple physiological level, our body actually responds to stress more or less the same,
mm,
biologically speaking, in terms of the way the body expresses something has happened. I feel stressed. My body has gone into a stress response. Now my body's tense. That's fairly across the board, biologically speaking. There's one way the body expresses that. But when we're talking about the emotional side of a stressor, day-to-day stress, I'm a little bit irritated, I'm a bit frustrated, the kids are driving me nuts
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like that kind of shows up in certain emotional patterns.
Mm.
If someone's coming in and they've lost someone
Mm-hmm.
really significant, the emotional expression of that actually changes the way the person holds themselves. So,
Mm.
physically speaking, that heaviness, and even if we were to just for a moment, and I know there's plenty of people listening who will have lost someone,
Yeah.
if you connect to that experience just for a moment, you
Mm.
will feel your body, the way you're holding yourself, start to change.
Mm.
So that then translates into, yeah, your body will be holding tension in a different way. There's heaviness around that, chest, that upper area. So, and I often trying to explain to people just how profound this mind-body connection is. I often just get them to think about very simply, if you were feeling a bit low,
Mm.
you're feeling a bit like down on yourself, it's been a shitty day, something's happened, whatever, maybe you're feeling a bit, yeah, low. Think about
Mm.
how you'd be holding yourself. You'd probably
Yeah.
feel a bit heavy, you'd be a little
Mm-hmm.
slumped, you wouldn't feel energized.
Yeah.
You might be looking at the ground. Then you think, how would I feel if I'm having a great day?
Yeah.
Everything going my way. I'm happy. It's like just I'm feeling great. You feel energized. You actually hold yourself
Mm.
differently. Now
Yeah.
that's a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if that is going on over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
We've got actual changes in the way your body and your mood, so your physiology and your psychology is
Mm-hmm.
showing up.
Mm.
That's kind of where the bio-emotional regulation comes in, helping
Amazing.
people to recognize that, to begin to build that connection with mind and body so that they can begin to see and feel, sense, if you like,
Yeah.
what's going on
Mm-hmm.
and connect in with our innate ability to actually process that
Mm.
stress, process those emotions.
So it's recognizing emotions and helping them to manage
To
it.
release. Absolutely. And actually, I have sort of a three steps to this
Okay.
philosophy just to sort of very simply help people understand it. And
Yeah.
you've gone straight for number one.
Okay. Yeah.
So the first one is
Recognizing.
actually to recognize
Yeah.
because our bodies actually have this capacity to process and release stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually an innate ability within all of us. It's an innate ability within mammals. We have that ability to discharge when we feel stimulated and to witness that sensory experience of an emotion. And if we don't get involved, we witness it. It actually moves through a cycle and then it completes. We feel something, if you like, a message is communicated, and then
Yeah.
we go back to baseline.
Yeah.
What's happened is we've been largely socialized out of that. Shove it down. It's not the moment
Yes.
to cry. And so what happens then is it's almost like our body's trying to communicate something, and we've just shut that off.
Yeah.
And so it's stuck halfway through that communication.
Mm-hmm.
So before we can really do a lot of processing, we need to restore that communication between mind and
Mm-hmm.
body. So we need to create the container
Mm-hmm.
for us to feel
Mm-hmm.
again or allow ourselves to feel
Yep.
and begin to gently invite what might be there. Can we recognize it? Can we
Mm-hmm.
name it?
Mm-hmm.
And then we move on to the second stage, which is
Mm-hmm.
really about releasing,
Mm-hmm.
releasing or regulating. Now, like I said before, our body does actually have an innate capacity to move through the emotional or the physical expression of emotion. And for a lot of people, they'll say, oh, when I feel stressed, I feel my thoughts racing. There's a great saying that actually goes, overthinking is underfeeling. It's a great one to just stop and think about it because what's happening is at some point we have felt it's not safe to feel.
Mm,
So we've actually gone up into our mind to
mm,
come up with strategies to think our way out of a situation.
yes.
And that's when we say, oh, you're stuck in your head. Because what's happened is you had discomfort in your body, you
Yeah.
felt something, your body was telling you something, you didn't know what to do with it. Perhaps the people around you didn't know what to do with it, and
Hmm.
they even made you feel like it wasn't okay. And so down it goes, but we need to find a solution. Part of our being is still trying to problem solve,
Hmm.
and so we go up into thinking. Our brain
Yeah.
goes, all right, well, if I can't feel, how do I get out? How do I change the
Uh,
situation? How do I get control again? How do I feel better
yeah.
without actually feeling?
Wow. That's great to recognize, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a powerful one. And I think, even just as a baby step, I say to people, if you start to notice something in your body in a situation, or you start to perhaps mentally know you're stressed. So a lot of
Mm,
people I say, oh, how do you know you're stressed? And they'll say to me, oh, because my thoughts are racing. So if
mm,
that happens, just take a moment,
mm.
take a breath. What do you feel in your body?
Yeah.
Can you name it? Can we begin to reconnect mind and body? And it doesn't have to be in moments of stress either. If you have a moment where you feel really excited or really beautiful, just stop and actually allow yourself to go, okay, that's what excitement feels like. Okay, great. Where do I feel that in my body? Like actually reconnect to the feeling side of your experience. Doesn't all
Mm,
have to be in moments of stress or discomfort. We
hmm.
actually need to restore our connection back to when things are feeling good too.
Yeah. 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 I
Mm.
think it's so hard because we're often not taught how to recognize our feelings and we don't want to talk about it. My teenage boys is the worst. They just don't
Mm,
want to talk about feelings. They don't want to talk about mental health. And the lit
100%.
the little one just wants to escape from school and it was the mental health day. He said,
Mm,
Mom, can I not
mm,
go?
interesting. And
Yeah.
you know what? I think that is really widespread across society, and it has been generations now
Mm,
across pretty much every culture. We have been socialized out of, feelings are not okay. It's a sign of weakness.
hmm.
I have a lot of clients who say to me, oh, I'm scared to actually go there because I don't know what's there. It's been a
Yeah.
lifetime of not going there. They're worried about what's going to come out.
Mm,
But, ultimately, there's another interesting phenomenon with emotions too, and we can sort of explain this as there being like a primary response.
hmm.
We have a situation, we have a reaction to it, we would feel something in that reaction. Could be anger, it could be sadness, could be frustration. And then because of perhaps how we've been socialized, we have a secondary reaction. So
Mm,
now this is how we feel about the fact that we felt something. So
mm,
that's often so that what you just shared with your children, what's
yeah.
actually happening there is a secondary reaction.
Mm,
They've at some point picked up, I shouldn't go there. It's not safe.
mm,
It's not okay. I'll look stupid, whatever it is. And
yeah.
so now we have a secondary emotion that sits on top.
Yeah. That's it. Just don't want to talk about it.
Just don't want to go there. So,
Yeah.
and that actually is a lot of the time what anxiety is.
Mm,
So I may have a slightly controversial view on anxiety, but I guess I'm coming from a somatic perspective. And
hmm.
what I've seen time and time again with people who are dealing with anxiety is a surface level emotion,
Mm,
meaning it's a secondary layer that the body has put in place to stop us from feeling something deeper that's going on.
mm,
And it also is a suggestion that there's a lot of things that have gone unprocessed in the system. And anxiety is kind of just the signal on top going, we just don't feel okay. But
mm,
sometimes there's so many things that have gone unprocessed, we don't even know why we don't feel okay. And this is when we have a diagnosis of, maybe a generalized anxiety disorder. This person doesn't even know why they feel anxious. They just feel anxious. And
mm,
often when we're working somatically with people, and anxiety comes to the front, we don't fight anxiety. In fact, this is another takeaway really for your listeners. When it comes to our emotions, the first thing that we need to do is allow, make it okay. Do not resist. There's a
Yes.
saying, what we resist persists.
Uh-huh.
And if you think about any time you felt uncomfortable or if you feel anxious,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the more you resist it, the worse you feel.
Mm,
So anytime you feel an emotion, the first thing to do is go, okay, it's totally okay, even if it's uncomfortable.
mm.
Don't react to it. Don't be worried about your anxiety. I know
Yeah,
that sounds kind
yeah,
of funny, but this is that secondary reaction we're talking about again. A lot of
yeah,
people go, oh, I feel nervous. Oh no, I feel nervous. What happens? It gets worse. Or, oh no, I
yeah.
feel anxious. So the first thing to do is go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to allow it to be there. I'm going to even maybe think about letting it be there and relaxing the rest of the body.
Mm,
So it's as if we are allowing that feeling to be expressed and we're just going to watch.
yeah.
So that saying, what we resist persists, is very true. And what I add to that is what we let be sets us free. So
Mm.
let it be.
I think a lot of my listeners also struggle from cravings, from food cravings and sugar cravings,
Mm,
because they
mhm,
want to lose weight, they don't want to have
mhm,
sugar and carbs, and they know those aren't helpful. And then they have emotions, there might be stress, and then
mhm.
I think that's letting the emotions go through without comfort
A-
eating. That's another.
Absolutely.
So feeling the emotions without pushing it down with sugar food and comfort food that they're used to. What do you think?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, what you're touching on there is, of course, the strategies that we all develop as a
Mm,
way to not feel that discomfort that we haven't known what to do with.
yeah.
And, food is just one of the first ways and easiest ways that we learn how to do that. It makes sense biologically for us to reach for something which, from a very, very young age, we associate obviously with nutrition
Mm,
and keeping us alive, but also with pleasure.
mm,
So it makes a lot of sense. And I want people to hear that and have no judgment for themselves at all.
yeah.
They're actually doing something that makes a lot of sense biologically. They're feeling
Mm,
uncomfortable.
yeah.
They haven't had the tools or perhaps the space
Yeah.
to be able to deal with that in a different way. And so they've reached for something that makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe mum has taught them that if you're uncomfortable, if you're in pain, you get
Absolutely.
ice cream, you get a lolly.
Absolutely. I remember reading this great book. It's a pretty old book actually. I think it's the title is When Food is Love. Have
Yes.
you heard of that book? It's
I
old
haven't heard,
school.
but I
Yeah,
don't know the book, but I can
makes
sort
sense.
of
Yeah, it
see.
it's old school, but it really beautifully just illustrates that point of where food will step in
Yeah.
and the role that it plays. And so people should really have, first of all, no judgment for themselves
Yeah.
because it makes a lot of sense. And second of all, get curious and go, okay, so if I find myself having that instinct to go for something like whether it's sweets or whether it's salty food, it's an extra coffee or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and I have enough awareness to go, I think I'm comfort seeking,
Mm,
even just a little bit here,
hmm.
that's your opportunity. Just stop for a
Mm,
second. And it's okay if you do still go
yeah.
for it this time. It's okay. But
Hmm.
just take a second and go, all right, I'm just going to maybe take a few breaths.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
going to ask my body, all right, what am I feeling?
Hmm.
Maybe what can I feel? Just see if you can sense even the slightest
Hmm.
bit of awareness in the body. And what we'll be looking for here is perhaps a little bit of tension, perhaps an area where you're holding your posture with a bit of contraction.
Hmm.
Maybe there's a bit of tightness in your chest or your belly, just anything. Just
Hmm.
scan, get curious. And I want you to try and sit with that.
Hmm.
Like I said before, allow it to be there. make it completely okay, even if it's a bit uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
See if you can name it. And if you can't name it as a feeling or an emotion, just name the quality of it. Oh, it feels tight. It feels heavy. See if there's anything else you can give it as a label. Sometimes that's enough
Mm-hmm.
because what your body's asking you to do is to just hear it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just wants your attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving it its attention. You're giving it attention to yourself. Sometimes that alone is enough for your body to go, okay, great. They got the message. They listened to me. Maybe I don't need to now seek to shove this down because I've kind of got your attention. That's all I wanted to begin with.
Okay, great.
So that's a way of thinking about it and perhaps even beginning to break that cycle. And it may not
Mm-hmm.
happen straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to a client about this the other day, actually, and she's working really hard to change some patterns. And there's, some coping strategies and things at play. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's really, really hard. And she's like, but you know what? Each time it happens, I just sort of sit there and I just try and sit in the discomfort just a little bit. And she was expecting that I was going to tell her that that wasn't enough, or she was expecting some big release. And I was like, no, that's actually perfect because we're talking about window of tolerance here.
Mm,
If you never feel anything, your window of tolerance has got quite small. You've
mm-hmm.
got so good at looking for something else to shut that down.
Yep.
So all we need to do is open that a little bit. Just sit with discomfort, just a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go and have the whatever it is, that's okay. Next time, sit a little bit longer,
Mm,
breathe through it. We're
yep.
increasing your body's belief in itself, if you like, to
Mm-hmm.
sit with the discomfort and still be okay.
Mm,
Yeah.
amazing. I think that's great tools for a lot of people who are struggling with regulating emotion, and then they have poor tools, not enough tools to deal with their own
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I certainly wasn't taught these things, and I had plenty of coping strategies. And it really is, and obviously we can speak about men's mental health and we can speak about the challenges that mothers deal trying to juggle all of the different elements. But really, across the board, we need more tools. But what
Mm,
I find is really, really interesting is this is not about actually reinventing the wheel. It's not
mm-hmm.
about fancy technology. It's
Mm,
actually about, like I said, just stopping and beginning to reconnect
mm-hmm.
and relearning what is actually completely innate to us. And this is something it's been, fascinating over the years watching people when they are somatically processing. So I'll help them connect to something and we'll use breath to move that discomfort through the body until they reach a state of peace.
Mm-hmm.
With some of my clients, particularly when it's quite intense,
Mm,
there's a point where even if intellectually they don't understand the mechanics of what's going on, there's a
mm,
point where their body takes over. So
okay.
what's fascinating is I'm seeing that our bodies actually know exactly what to do here. We have
Wow.
just socialized ourselves out of it. So there's a bit of
Yeah.
a relearning period,
Yeah.
but we are all capable of doing this. And with a little bit of practice, giving it just that little bit longer if you can, use your
Mm-hmm.
breath,
Mm-hmm.
you will actually become really, really proficient at navigating challenges in a completely different way.
So do you do a breath work with your clients when they come in to see you?
Yeah, breathwork can play a piece of it. I find so when, in terms of when we say processing emotion, what I mean is we connect to the sensory experience of an emotion.
Okay. All
So
right.
we're
Yeah.
connecting to that kind of awareness of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And breath is one of the ways
Mm-hmm.
that we can support the body to sort of almost continue to relax
Mm-hmm.
as that emotion is moving through the body.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and as you know, I know you're a breathwork
Mm-hmm.
facilitator. Breath is powerful and
Absolutely.
breath
Yes.
is organic,
Yeah.
and we can lean on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So what sort of conditions do you work with, and who would benefit seeing you?
Yes. So Physically, from an osteopathic perspective, I do tend to work with people with the sort of more complex chronic conditions. So people have, an old injury that really isn't resolving, and they've seen and tried a lot of different things.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm fairly helpful with because I've got those different perspectives, and we
Hmm.
can often go, all right, let's look at this from a different perspective. There's
Hmm.
perhaps something we haven't or hasn't been looked at before.
Mm.
So I do see a lot of people with chronic health conditions, but also people who feel as though they're dealing with chronic stress.
Mm. Hmm.
And that may be showing up as chronic anxiety. They may be having trouble sleeping. They may be aware of like chronic tension in the neck, the jaw, the headaches. They know, and these people who are listening, they're going to go, I know that's me. I feel like what's going on in my body
Yeah.
is connected with stress. And it could be that
Mm.
they've got some other health conditions
Yeah.
and they know it flares up when they're stressed.
Mm.
So they're aware that there's something going on and
Yeah.
stress is at least a part of it.
Hmm.
So then we're starting to go, okay, maybe the nervous system's stuck in that pattern.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to support the body to remember what's safe and peace and what that feels like. Or maybe we do actually need to look at a pattern more specifically, a situation where they go, oh my gosh, every time I'm in that situation, oh, I feel sick, or whatever happens, I feel stressed out. There's some sort of reaction that takes place.
Hmm.
That's where we can go straight into the bio-emotional regulation and give the system a chance to work out what's going on underneath
Mm.
and actually deal with it. And a lot of my clients are seeing a therapist as well.
A
And they say this
psychologist
is
or yeah?
actually, this is very complementary because a lot of people will, particularly if it's sort of a more conventional talk style therapy, which, I still think is fantastic. And
Yeah.
that provides a really, useful tool.
Hmm.
A lot of my clients will say they can kind of go and, unpack that intellectually, understand it, but then they still need to support their body to actually deal with the emotion. They can
Hmm.
still feel that they feel the same way. They understand why things are happening, but how they feel or how they're reacting hasn't actually changed. And so that's where the somatic work comes in.
Mm. Wow. Great. All right. Amazing.
Mm.
So, you are in Being Well because we work
Mhm.
together in Prahran. I'm only there one
Mm.
day a fortnight, but I love seeing you passing my door, and then we
We'll
wave
grab
each
you
other.
more
But
often for a chat.
I know we're just so time poor because we're busy with our own clients and patients.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so my listeners can come and find you in Being Well in Prahran.
Absolutely. And the best way to read a little bit more about what I do, whether that's you're looking for that holistic perspective on osteopathy, or you think you may be interested in perhaps looking at some stress that the body's holding on to, best way to get me is thriveosteopathy.com.au. And you
Yeah,
can email me at info@thriveosteopathy.com.au.
that's
So on my website's a bit of information about both of those modalities.
yeah.
Um, and email me if they've got, any questions.
That's all right. I'll put all the link in the show notes and
Fabulous.
people can reach you and look at your website and then reach you that way. And how about social media? Where can people find you on social media?
So social media, I'm on Instagram, Dr. Lena Stocks-Ramsay,
Yeah.
and I am on LinkedIn. Not very active on LinkedIn, but you can find me on LinkedIn. I do some corporate work. So if anyone is listening to this and thinking, you know what, this sounds like something that my colleagues and I could begin to dive into or at least understand the basics. Um, that's something that I found has been very interesting. Obviously, we don't go to the same depth
Hmm.
in a corporate setting. Obviously, that socialization of is it okay to feel that comes up. But even just beginning to understand the basics of there's actually a different way to handle stress,
Hmm.
particularly because for a lot of people, the stress is connected to, a working environment.
Yeah. I think that'll
So
be great if employers will get you to do a
yes.
talk and teach the
Yeah.
employees how to manage the stress, and that'll be
Yeah.
amazing to improve productivity and improve their well-being too.
Absolutely. And the ripple effect is a lot of people, spend a lot of time at work.
Yep.
And if there's things going on, they come home and then that shows up in their family life.
Oh, yeah.
So, for your listeners who are juggling work and juggling family, it's unrealistic to think that the two worlds don't actually collide. Our stress comes with us. We don't literally leave the office and then we forget about it. There's very
Yep.
few people who've mastered the art of drawing that line completely.
Mm,
So, yeah, absolutely.
amazing. I love your work, Lena.
Thank you. It's
Thank
great to
you.
chat.
Yeah, love it. So I hope all the listeners will enjoy this episode and check out Lena's work on social media and her website, and they can be free to connect with you if they feel like that is resonating with them.
Absolutely. Brilliant. It's been great to have this intro and this conversation.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the listeners for coming on and listening to this podcast. And until next time, I'll bring to you another very interesting guest. Thank you for staying tuned.